It is instrumental to know why war continued to persist despite all measures in place that could have been preventive to that event. We have to understand, going back to the 1920s when the League of Nations was established, by then the effort of the American president, Wilson Woodrow, that formulated a whole lot of principles that could have guided against escalation of war that still not really contain that war and conflict. We ought to look into why these things are this way. In fact, I would say that it is structural arrangement that were responsible for frequent escalation of war. Wilson Woodrow, of course, he propounded ways, about 14 points that he presented in the post-First World War narrative, which he mentioned. One of it is what the cancellation and abandoning of imperialism, followed by the right for self-determination, a group of people who are characterized by who have chosen to live together or with group within a similar characteristics to have the right for self-determination and not to be imposed a given system of government, determine how to govern themselves and determine their political future. He made this statement. I would want you guys to analyze that statement. Now, looking at that fact, looking at that statement, he also then talked about other issues that are necessary, where he suggested the League of Nations, a system that would have to guide against conflict and also give room for peaceful diplomacy on events of the world. Of course, that he had made mention, he talked about, but was not allowed to participate in the League of Nations, which brought about the escalation of wars and the rest of that eventually led to the Second World War. After the Second World War, there was still need for resolutions for systems that would check against escalation of that event, similar event. That brought about the UN. In fact, it becomes that the failure of the League of Nations was what led to the Second World War. The mistakes that triggered the Second World War are also persisting the present time. And I would want also look into why this system will continue to tilt this way, why there will continue to be war, despite the measures in place, despite the infrastructure, despite the money we invest in trying to build institutions and formulation of policies that will guide against escalation. Why we continue to have that is because of the way the world is structured. Every nation have their respective interests. The interest to dominate, the interest for them to be in charge, continue to persist and continue to give room for disagreement at all corners. Even the US, who had been the champion of the world peace, had been responsible for formulation of principles that will give room for all men to live equally, all men to have the right to self-determination, still would want to impose their own system of governance on others. Like Woodrow said, that every system, every people should be allowed the right for self-determination. Do they allow people to decide their political future? Have they allowed Iran to decide their political future? Did they allow Libya to decide their political future? Are they allowing non-democratic government? They fought against the Communist Party of China, all in the interest that they are wanting not to have it spread within that sphere. They guided against it when that idea came on from the 1949. They went into that. They also fought mobilized their troops in South Korea, in that South Korea 1950 to 1953 war, that to guide against expansion of autocratic system of government. And that they did all because they are guiding to push democracy. And that does not contradict the position of Woodrow Wilson, who said the people should be allowed to lead themselves, to self-determine how they will have to be led, to self-determine their own way of life. Sometimes we also see that this is all about politics, it's about hypocrisy, because this same democracy they advocated for are also being truncated by them in some cases too. Like the case of Iran in 1953, that brought about the hostage of a democratic elected government and introduction of a monarchy. They did that all because the democracy was not favoring them. So the democracy that is advocated by US is the one that they think they should be in charge of. Anyone that stands to talk about a distinctness or try to be different from what that would benefit US is considered differently and could be truncated. So this is what we have to think about. The world is structured in the line of self-interest, national interest, and when once it falls off from that sphere, the system that pushes it back sees it as being antithetical and works against it. So if we as a people try to look at the hypocrisy in these international organizations and try to ask questions, we are doing that on the aspect that we are really concerned. UN had been weakened now, so much weakened. Okay, now Trump came up with a peace initiative trying to bring up front what will topple, what will sideline the UN. Good and fine. Some persons in the Middle East, some of their allies in the Middle East, committed so much money in that peace initiative, peace move, with the view of stabilizing the region, investing in Gaza, rebuilding Gaza, and also ensure the peace within that region. While still an anticipation, he had gone to ignite more violence, creating more chaos within that zone. So, of what essence was that peace movement? They invested money on a peace movement and a peace initiative that still had been undermined. Of what essence? Just because the system that Iran is trying to portray does not favor the people that are pushing for the peace initiative. That is to tell you that national interest supersedes the regional and the world view about peace and conflict. So when once it doesn't fall within the man who is pioneering it, he sees it as opposing and he goes against it. He evaluates every agreement so made, every attempt of having it sealed will be truncated. Now the Middle East, who have contributed so much, who have been faithful followers of US, would have to be on regret for investing and believing that the alliance with US will guarantee their stability. Of course, it hasn't. It hasn't in any way.